Picture Riga on a Tuesday morning. The trams run on time, the co-working spaces are full, the old town is postcard perfect, and the startup scene has enough venture capital flowing through it to make a visiting journalist write a glowing piece about Eastern European resilience. Now picture a village 2 hours east, grass growing through the floor of a primary school that closed because there were no children left to fill it, a house with its door still open, furniture still inside, a bus stop with a timetable that nobody reads because nobody's left to catch the bus. Both of those images are of Latvia in 2026. The city is real. The emptiness is real. And the reason nobody talks about the second image while celebrating the first one is the story we're going to tell today. This is not a story about poverty. It is not a war story. It is something quieter and in some ways far more disturbing. It is a story about a country that opened its doors and watched itself drain away. Demographers have a careful phrase for it. We're going to call it what it actually is, a silent evacuation. In 1989, Latvia had a population of 2.67 million. Today, in 2026, that number stands at approximately 1.83 million, a decline of nearly 32% in less than 4 decades. Let that settle for a moment. Nearly 1 in 3 Latvians is gone. Now every country ages. Birth rates fall across the developed world. That is normal. What is happening in Latvia is not normal. According to the 2024 World Factbook, Latvia ranked first among European countries in terms of depopulation. First, not third, not fifth. First. In Latvia last year there were 12,571 births against 26,341 deaths, a natural decline of more than 13,000 people in 12 months. The total fertility rate sits at 1.36 children per woman, far below the 2.1 needed to replace the existing population. The difference between a natural demographic dip and what Latvia is experiencing comes down to one word: structure. A natural dip is temporary, correctable, and manageable. What Latvia has is a self-reinforcing loop. Young people leave, so fewer children are born, so the tax base shrinks, so services deteriorate, so more young people leave. By April 2025, Latvia's population had already fallen to 1.847 million, losing another 15,300 people in a single year. A whole town, gone in 12 months. And the people leaving are not random. About 80% of recent emigrants have been under 35, meaning the remaining population ages faster with every departure. This is not a dip. This is a structural evacuation, and it had a starting gun. On the 1st of May 2004, Latvia joined the European Union. The official mood was celebratory: integration, freedom, opportunity. The future had arrived. What actually arrived was a choice that a young Latvian worker could not rationally refuse. Average gross annual earnings in Latvia at the time were around €7,789, compared to €37,611 in the UK. That is not a wage gap. That is a different economic universe. And the moment EU accession made crossing that border as simple as buying a bus ticket, the math became unavoidable. Following EU enlargement in 2004, the UK, Ireland and Sweden opened their labour markets to Eastern European workers, prompting a migration wave of 1.2 million workers over just 3 years. The most affected sending countries, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland and Slovakia, experienced an outflow of up to 9% of their entire workforce. Latvia did not lose workers who were unemployed or desperate. About 85% of Latvian emigrants between 2004 and 2008 were employed when they left. They emigrated because of low wages or the perception of better career opportunities abroad. The EU did not push them out. It simply made staying economically irrational. That is a distinction that matters enormously, because it means no single policy, no single government, and no single election result can reverse it. The force pulling people west is not a crisis. It is the permanent structural reality of a single market, with a 5-to-1 wage differential baked in. Studies found that while EU migration produced a 0.2% GDP increase for the EU as a whole, GDP declined 1.1% in the long term in the sending countries due to labour loss. Europe gained. Latvia paid. If you want to understand how this mechanism operates across other post-accession economies, subscribe now. The Latvia story is one chapter in a much longer book. Drive east from Riga for 2 hours, and the landscape shifts. Not dramatically at first. Then the roadsides change. Fewer cars, fewer lights at night, fewer people. Welcome to Latgale. At the beginning of 2025, 239,166 inhabitants lived in Latgale, a drop of 1.7%, or 4,200 people, in a single year. The mean age in Latgale is 45.9 years, the highest of any Latvian region. Only 12.7% of its population are children. Latgale's GDP per capita stands at roughly $13,649, just 36% of the EU average and the lowest of any Latvian region. The Riga region generates nearly 3 times the output per person. What that means on the ground is not a statistic. It is a school with boarded-up windows. It is a hospital that now operates as a clinic 2 days a week. It is an elderly woman who has not seen a doctor in 8 months because the nearest one is 40 kilometers away and she does not drive. According to projections, by 2049, several Latgale counties, including Baltinava and Krasleva, will lose all their residents to emigration or mortality. By 2050 to 2055, the city of Resekin itself, the regional centre, is projected to become a ghost town. Resekin is not a hamlet. It is the second largest city in a European Union member state, and its working-age population has largely already left. The people who remain in Latgale are mostly elderly. They are not leaving because they are not mobile enough to leave. Their children have already gone. Their grandchildren are being raised in Dublin and Dusseldorf, and every year the average age of those left behind climbs a little higher. Here is the trick that makes Latvia's collapse invisible to the outside world. In 2022, Riga and its surrounding region generated 65.6% of Latvia's entire GDP, some 23.7 billion euros out of a national total of 36.1 billion. 2/3 of a country's economic output is concentrated in one city. Riga and the area around it generate up to 69% of Latvia's GDP, creating a state clearly divided into a strong centre, concentrated within a small area, and extensive peripheries. The gap between Riga and the rest of the country is more noticeable than in comparable Baltic neighbours, Lithuania and Estonia, which have other cities functioning as regional development anchors. Latvia does not. Outside Riga, there is no second engine. There is no Kaunas, no Tartu. There is Latgale. When international agencies report Latvia's GDP growth, when the IMF writes a positive assessment, when a tech publication runs a piece on Riga's startup ecosystem, they are describing a single city-state floating above a sinking country. The GDP numbers are real. The inequality behind them is also real. GDP per capita in the Riga region stands at over 27,000 euros. In Latgale, the figure is under 10,000 euros. That is a 3-to-1 ratio inside a country the size of West Virginia. And as population concentrates further into the capital, those numbers will continue to look better on paper, while the reality outside the ring road continues to rot. Riga is not proof that Latvia is fine. Riga is the last thing standing. There is a transaction happening inside the Latvian state budget that nobody labels accurately. A child is born in Riga. The state pays for her schooling, her university education, and her medical training. 17 years of public investment, funded by Latvian taxpayers. She graduates as a doctor. 6 months later, she's working in a hospital in Hamburg. Germany gets a fully trained physician. Latvia gets nothing. Not even the tax revenue would have helped pay for the next generation. Even before the main wave of post-accession migration, Western European countries were actively recruiting Latvian doctors, scientists, and computing specialists. Medical advertisements promised Latvian doctors earnings up to 8 times higher than domestic salaries. 8 times. There is no loyalty program, no patriotism bonus that competes with that. The European Commission's own representative in Latvia concluded that the country's brain drain was no longer a risk, it is a reality. Studies on migration intention found that among Latvian students, 2/3 reported planning to live abroad. After 3 years of living overseas, the number planning to return drops from 10% to 3%. 3%. Once someone has built a life in Germany or the UK, they do not come back. Their children grow up speaking German or English. Their professional networks are Western. Their mortgages are Western. Latvia paid to train them. The West collects the return. This is the hidden tax. And it compounds with every graduating class. Stay with us, because the story stops being about economics and starts being about something much harder to solve. The pension system of any country runs on a simple ratio. Workers pay in, retirees draw out. As long as there are enough workers per retiree, the system holds. Latvia is running out of workers. A study by the Stockholm School of Economics in Riga projects that Latvia's population will fall from 1.86 million in 2025 to approximately 1.34 million by 2060. The working age population is projected to decline from 1.17 million today to around 750,000, while the number of pensioners will grow to nearly 500,000. That produces a ratio of roughly 1.5 workers per pensioner, compared to 2 workers currently. 1.5 workers per pensioner. In a country where the average pension already sits at around €470 per month, 40% of pensioners receive payments below the subsistence level. The old age dependency ratio is projected to increase from 36 to 61% over the period 2022 to 2070, placing severe upward pressure on both pension spending and public healthcare costs. The government's answer so far has been to raise the retirement age. It now stands at 65. The idea of raising it further has met strong opposition from the working class, given the poor health and life expectancy of many Latvian residents. You cannot ask people to work longer when their bodies are wearing out, and the birth rate is not recovering. In the first quarter of 2025, only 2,756 children were born across the entire country, some 398 fewer than in the same period the year before, a 12.6% drop year on year. The math here is not complicated, it is just brutal. Latvia shares a border with Russia. That sentence carries weight in 2026 that it did not carry a decade ago. Since the invasion of Ukraine, the Baltic states have become the front line of a continent trying to figure out how far deterrence stretches. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania remain vulnerable to a potential Russian military attack due to their geography. The Suwalki Gap, a narrow strip of land between Kaliningrad and mainland Russia, links Lithuania and Poland and is the Baltic's only land connection to the rest of NATO. In September 2025, Russian drones and planes violated the airspace of Estonia, Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, Norway, Poland, and Romania, prompting NATO to launch an enhanced vigilance activity called Eastern Sentry. Latvia is spending €303 million over 5 years fortifying its eastern border, digging anti-tank ditches and installing obstacles along the frontier. Canada is deploying up to 2,200 troops as part of NATO's multinational brigade in Latvia, with full capability expected by 2026. But here is what no multinational brigade solves. An empty border region does not just lack soldiers. It lacks the civilian infrastructure, the local knowledge, and the social fabric that make a defence sustainable. You cannot defend territory that your own people have already abandoned. A frontier without farmers, teachers, mechanics, and families is not a defended border. It is a vacuum. And vacuums invite pressure. The counties of eastern Latvia, the ones sitting closest to Russia and Belarus, are precisely the ones projected to lose their entire resident populations within a generation. NATO can send troops. It cannot send routes. Latvia's GDP per capita has been rising. That is true. Latvia's GDP per capita has climbed from 60% of the EU average in 2013 to 70% in 2023. Progress, by any conventional measure. Here is what that number does not tell you. A ratio improves when either the numerator grows or the denominator shrinks. Latvia's GDP per capita is rising partly because Latvia's GDP is growing, yes, but also because Latvia's population is shrinking at a rate that flatters the arithmetic. Fewer people sharing a relatively stable economic output means higher output per person, on paper. It does not mean the average Latvian is wealthier, it means there are fewer Latvians. Latvia still has one of the lowest levels of actual individual consumption per capita in the European Union, sitting 26% below the EU average, among the lowest in the bloc. When the World Bank highlights Latvia's per capita growth trajectory, it is describing a number that is partly a function of the country losing its human base. When the European Commission publishes a positive regional assessment anchored in Riga's tech output, it is describing one city in a dying nation. This is not a conspiracy. It is how aggregate statistics work. But the effect is that international institutions are routinely reporting an improving picture of a country that is, by every demographic and social measure, in structural decline. The report looks fine, the country does not. The UN estimates that Latvia's population will decline by 17.5% to approximately 1.51 million people by 2050. That assumes current trends. It does not assume acceleration. It does not account for the fact that a shrinking population produces conditions that accelerate further shrinkage. Demographers call it the tipping point, the moment where the feedback loop becomes self-sustaining and no realistic policy intervention can reverse it natively. Latvia may already be past it. The government knows. They have task forces. They have remigration campaigns aimed at the diaspora. Data shows that 72.9% of recent migrants arriving in Latvia are emigrants, Latvians returning from abroad. That is a hopeful signal. But the numbers returning do not come close to matching the numbers still leaving, and the natural decline from deaths over births runs at nearly 14,000 people per year regardless. What Latvia requires is not a campaign. It is a fundamental restructuring of what the country offers to people who might stay or return. Better wages, functional rural infrastructure, a healthcare system that works outside Riga. None of that is cheap. All of it requires a tax base, and the tax base is the thing that has been leaving on budget airlines since 2004. Before you close this video, look at the rural region nearest to your own city. Count the closed shops. Notice the aging population. Ask who is still there and who has already left. Because the Latvian story is not Latvian. It is the leading edge of a process playing out across every peripheral region of every integrated economic bloc on Earth. Latvia just got there first. The question is not whether this is coming. The question is how far along it already is. If this video changed how you read economic headlines, share it with one person who should see it. And if you want to go deeper on how capital flows hollow out the periphery to feed the core, the next video is already waiting for you.